Since our founding, the school has always had democracy at the forefront of its belief in how a school should be run, what our goals should be, not only in teacher voice and trying to give everyone more say than is traditionally expected at a school for faculty, but also fundamentally for students. We have 7 core values which are very much in use at our school, and one of them is commitment to democracy. Students have opportunities to have a say in how the school is run. They do so through participating in something that we have called Democracy Block once a week. And we try through our student town meeting structure to have students have a say in addressing community problems. And that's coming from some of the founders of the school that were very influenced by the work of Lawrence Kohlberg and Just Community approach to education. And honestly, it's in a continual evolution for us. It's not like we have it completely worked out, but it's very much part of our philosophy. When it comes to our structures, I am the teacher co-director here. This is unique to probably just about any school in that while I am still a teacher and I'm still a member of my teacher union, the UFT, I very much run the school with the principal co-director. And so this does not exist at all in the Department of Education. It would, under scrutiny, not hold up at all, but it's just a commitment to anyone who works here that they believe in this structure. And so I have really at the forefront of a lot of what I do is representing teacher voice, teacher democracy, and student voice as well. My predecessor called the position the ombudsman of the school, and it's a rotating position, so it's never like located in one person. So every 3 years, a new person takes the position. Unfortunately, we are not a really community school. Largely because we serve all 5 boroughs. Realistically, that's not all 5. It's Manhattan, Bronx, Brooklyn, and some from Queens. And students are coming from wide range of places, and that's the way New York City is set up, so that high schools are not neighborhood-based, but students come from, like some of our students are traveling an hour and a half to get here. So the likelihood that families are going to be involved in the same level of like all the students are coming from the community, it's just a great challenge. That being said, it's a faculty teacher, sort of quasi-hybrid like led school. It is not one that is decided upon exclusively by administration with student input. There's a lot of our decisions that we make, and we could talk about our decision-making process at some point, that are impacted by student voice, and there are faculty members who refuse to give their consent to decisions until students have been consulted, and there is some sense of what their perspective is on the matter. So in terms of the strengths and weaknesses, it makes us a much better school. It makes it a school that I think a lot of people feel like they want to stay at. My experience, and this is actually my 4th school, is we have very low turnover because everyone feels really invested and valued. When we make decisions, we make them collectively. We're not always like gung-ho about every decision, but everybody knows that their input is valued, has been accounted for, and that they have ultimately agreed to it. Otherwise, we would not be going ahead with the direction that we take. And the challenges of that is it takes a tremendous amount of time to actually come to consensus on a lot of our decisions. And it creates a lot of interesting situations where you're having conversations with with adults that you would never have in a typical space, but it feels much more like the type of world that I want to be a part of and the kind of types of communities that I want to be a part of when I'm having these meaningful conversations about what do we all sort of envision our school should be like. We just recently actually agreed to a small pilot that's in the Department of Education. It's actually very interesting. It is a situation where there's a number of 8th graders who are overaged in one district in the Bronx, and it's like, you know, a district that encompasses one of the poorest neighborhoods in the entire country. And so what you have is a number of children who are 16, 17 years old at least in 8th grade. And the city, and I should say there are certain members of the Department of Education that have felt like this needs to be addressed. And this phenomena exists probably in other, all over the place, and not just in this district in New York City. But some people were interested in trying to address this one issue, and their hope was that they could get them out of those schools and get them on the road to high school, even though technically they haven't graduated. So it's called the 9 Squared program. And what it entails is high schools taking some of those students sort of on a quasi in-between sort of status where they're taking classes in a high school, but they're still working towards completing their middle school credits. So we were confronted with the fact that this, while it fits very much with our mission of trying to provide, part of our mission is providing a safe haven for students who have not experienced education or have felt neglected in other spaces, to welcome those types of students and to try to provide that haven for them. The reality is that we knew that these were going to be very needy students. We knew that it was going to be hard to support them, that it was going to take a lot of resources, and it was a challenge for our community to make the decision about whether we would join this program. And it raised all kinds of issues about who is really going to be doing this work. Are we going to be stretched too thin? Do we really have the capacity? Does it really, because the money was going to come with a special ed teacher, but is that going to be enough? Would we need another social worker? And all very valid questions. And we had to really discuss. And the other challenge is that we had a very short time span. As much as possible, we try to, in our decision-making process, give time to really attend to decisions so that we're not rushing. But this one was like, you have to make a decision, and we have like a few days to make it. And so we were really challenged as a community. We ultimately agreed to the program, and we're in the initial stages of it, and we have about 8 students that we've taken, and we're trying our best with them. But it was, it's just interesting, and it surfaced all kinds of opinions from people that I never thought I would hear, but I think we're all better for it. That's a process that was not something that we just happened upon or were just started from the beginning. It was a lot of hard work from people who were committed to a democratic decision-making process, but also knew that we needed to come up with one that was really gonna work well for a school and not drag on and take too much time. And through a lot of work and tuning and practice, we feel like, while we haven't completely worked it out perfectly, we feel like we've landed upon something that is serving our school much better and is also expedient. Like it doesn't take too long. It works because we're able to make decisions in a manner that don't drag on over too long a period of time. So I would say, in our last sort of pulse check about it, that people were feeling really good about our process. The James Baldwin School is part of a network of schools in New York State, the performance-based consortium. I think we've grown to over 40 schools. But those schools are all premised on certain core values that are about depth over coverage, about providing opportunities for students to go and do analytic research papers and in the place of standardized tests. And also the schools are, for the most part, believe in teachers are leaders at these schools, and very often that they believed in and collaboratively run schools. So, Vanguard was also of that mindset, and I felt like, we made decisions by consensus. I would say that I think we struggled at times because we didn't have a process that was completely spelled out like the one that we've developed here. And so it didn't always feel like we truly had the ability to influence difficult decisions. My other schools were not teacher-led, and my other two schools, I did not feel valued and did not feel heard, and I felt like a lot of my colleagues felt the same way, and so many of us left because of that. It means a lot to be in a place where, as much as possible within a system that is very hierarchical, we work to not have that hierarchy, and we work to collaboratively run schools. So yeah, I'm thankful to have the experience and to be in a place that I truly believe is doing this good work. I have been very interested in that work, going on like probably 8 years before I even came to the school, or even longer than that. And for me personally, a lot of that has to do with my political outlook that believes in civil rights, equality for all, a social justice background that is concerned with equalizing our society, fighting against much of the injustice that we see, and a lot of that I would say has to do with systemic racism that exists in our country. And so in my context, what that looks like is a very clear system that is pushing out black and brown students, at much greater rates, 3 to 1, in terms of suspensions to white students, and are putting them disproportionately into criminal justice system. And so, I have observed this and seen this in my own work, and I have seen that zero tolerance, punitive approaches don't work. And so they don't work for a few different reasons. One, because they're more likely to push students out, and the data will back that up. But also because they don't work in terms of really getting a person to realize the mistake that they've made, what might be wrong with it, and how they can repair the situation and restore community. And maybe even before I started doing this work, I had a real sense that schools need to have strong communities, and that it's very important to work towards building those communities, because when I've experienced that I've been in schools like that, those communities really flourish, and they help students to reach their potential. So somewhere along the line, I started to investigate and learn that restorative approaches to discipline made much more sense. They were much more effective. And so at my previous school, I got very interested in a protocol called the Fairness Committee, which actually I learned about from our sister school here at James Baldwin Humanities Preparatory, which is on this floor. Started a Fairness Committee many years ago. And so I started one at Vanguard High School. And it was a really powerful experience to see the impact that it had on students, to see the impact that it had on teachers, and to just provide many more opportunities to repair relationships and to repair harm. And so I was thankful when I came to James Baldwin, which was one of the reasons why I came here, that they had that, and there was a fundamental belief that this was the right approach to education. And while it's not a cure-all, and it's never easy, and it doesn't presume that it solves all problems. I feel very good about the way that students are much more likely to feel connected to our community and want to stick with us and want to graduate from here and want to come back and visit us and feel that we've meant something to them in their development and in their lives, because we have always at our core have a belief of this is a place where we love you, we care about you, we want you here, we understand that you're going to mess up at times, but we're going to work towards fixing the situation and thinking about new ways forward. So just as a broad overview, it's I think if you believe in like community control, if you believe in like building community in schools, it has to go hand in hand with a restorative approach to discipline. Academics is only part of the education of a child. If you want to teach to the whole child, which I think I believe in very strongly, and I think many people would argue is necessary, you have to provide time for social and emotional development, and you have to provide time for when things go wrong, because that is the world that our young people are going to go into. They can't just be excellent at math and great mathematicians and think like a scientist and work like a historian if they don't have the social skills to interact in the world that they're going to go into. And I've never had a student that's come back and said that we wasted too much time on this. I can't say that I've had conversations with educators who feel like that they struggle with the amount of time that it requires, and that is 100% legitimate because it does take time. So I think you need to be thoughtful for the balance, right? You need to be thoughtful for when are you spending too much time on this, and when is it not working out, or when is it becoming too stressful on an educator and making it hard for them to be able to teach their classes, and we are. And so we think very much about how do we offload some of those challenges onto non-teachers. How do we build in time into the academic school day so that there's opportunities to attend to these issues. And a lot of it, we would argue, is not about restoring the community, but instead building the community. So what we do, and many other schools do this too, is we have our crew, which is like an advisory, that 4 days a week is intending to build that community, teach certain social emotional skills, provide rigorous academic support, and do a lot of the things that just can never be done in just a course of attending to science, math, English, and social studies. I think what we believe is that it has to be a communal approach. So restorative justice can't live in the hands of one or a few people. It's not going to be successful. And what I mean by that is that everyone who is here on staff, and I would even go further to say that students as well, have a place in building the community. And everyone also has a place in restoring the community when harms take place. And so whether there be in a fairness committee, which brings together multiple stakeholders, including faculty and young people that try to restore harms when they arise, or whether it be a teacher who is meeting with a crew advisor and a student who has been disruptive in class or who is just not attending, everyone has a place in trying to figure out how do we move things forward, how do we understand a different perspective, how do we get on the same page so that one of the most important things, which is the learning, is able to take place. And so we do believe that everyone needs to have a role. That being said, we need to, as I mentioned, figure out how that doesn't become an overwhelming burden on any one particular teacher, which it can be at times, and how we can support them with having enough counseling, which frankly, I would argue that the Department of Education, needs to budget more for. They should budget for restorative coordinators in every school that wants one. This is a fight here in New York City that Teachers Unite and Dignity School Campaign is currently working on. So there needs to be more resources spent on that, but it's got to be a community-wide approach. We have something which I haven't talked about called our core value response policy, or protocol, I should say. What a teacher can do if a student is being disruptive is they can send them to their crew advisor. And so that's supposed to be the first response. And we have a pink pass that gets written, and the student is told to go to their crew advisor. In practice, that isn't necessarily happening all the time, but that's like the first option of how things can be handled. But there's, a lot of things that might intercede, or come before that. There's maybe a lot of other interventions I haven't even talked about, like what efforts teachers are making to create norms in their classrooms, or community contracts, or maybe figuring out ways to address norm violations in classes. So there's any number of things, but one thing that can be done is that a student can be sent to their crew advisor. If that happens, the teacher has a choice whether they want to have a re-entry conversation. We call these our CRCs, where the crew advisor and the teacher and the student would meet in advance before they were to come back, or not, or maybe they feel that they can handle it another way. So there's sort of a menu of options. There's never like one way it's handled, and the crew advisor has a lot of agency over advising about what do they think is the best way to move forward. We don't have traditional deans either. We have our restorative coordinator who has some role at these times and might be called in, but in our core value response protocol, she's supposed to be addressing our level 2 infractions. These are either more repeated behaviors, or they are maybe more serious violations, and ultimately she's supposed to be coordinating a response as opposed to just like taking it on and like, I'm going to deal with it. The Fairness Committee at the James Baldwin School looks like this. Anytime that there is what someone might call a core value violation at the James Baldwin School, someone can be brought to fairness. And what that means is anyone in the community. So a faculty member can bring a student can bring a faculty member, even including the principal, and that has happened before, or a student can bring another student to fairness. And what happens when they come to fairness is it is facilitated by an adult. It has a couple other students on the panel. These are students that rotate. It's never the same people, because the whole premise is that this is a community protocol and a community response. And we intentionally try to have as many different people sit in on these fairnesses and facilitate them. What happens is the person who's bringing the other person to fairness first starts. They talk about what happened. They must mention why they're bringing in, what core value has been violated. After that, and they do that uninterrupted. After that, the person who is being brought gets to speak and talk about why, from their perspective, what happened. The next part is everyone in the panel gets to ask some clarifying questions, just to make sure they're clear about what happened. These might turn into more probing questions to get more at the heart of what really happened. And then it'll eventually turn into a round of coming to consensus, and it is a consensus-based protocol, about whether or not they agree that the core value that has been mentioned, or the core values that have been mentioned, have in fact been violated. And then there's a sense of what needs to happen. So what's always intended is that there's an opportunity to take different perspectives, to consider alternative ways of doing things, for not only the harm to be repaired towards the community, but for the relationship between the two people to be repaired, and for a new path forward to agreed upon. There's never prescribed consequences. There has to be an agreement from the person who is being brought, whether they can commit to those consequences that might be outlined. There's a series of proposed consequences that get generated, and then the person says, I'm going to agree to do these number of consequences. And then the facilitator of the fairness will actually be responsible for checking back with the person to, in the future, make sure that they've done what they've committed to doing. And so in that way, we've been doing this in humanities prep even before us, and they got it from Scarsdale Alternative High School for many years. I mean, this is truly a restorative practice and approach that in many ways precedes a lot of the attention that we're currently seeing in the last 5 years from schools. It's not like the only thing that we do. It's not always perfect, but it is really a remarkable approach that when is used has great potential for moving things forward in a way that a detention or a suspension or a more punitive approach never does. And I could attest to numerous times I've experienced it, and students being able to push their thinking forward, either maybe not in the moment, but I've seen in the weeks or months to come that I'm convinced would never have happened if they had not had the opportunity to do it. It entails a proposal being made by a few members of our faculty. They generate a proposal that is seen in advance of a meeting. There's an opportunity in our first faculty meeting to tune the proposal. What that means is that the proposal is framed. There are clarifying questions. Some warm and cool feedback is taken. And then actually what we do is we first decide, do we in fact agree on the type of decision it is? So it could be a consensus decision. It could be a delegated decision. That means it's delegated to a smaller group of people and we agree upon whatever they land. It could be a co-director's decision. It could be a UFT union decision. But we have to agree upon what type of decision it is. That's usually only the first thing that we would have time for. We don't do anything beyond that. With the one thing is that we might do like a consensus check to see where we're at, where people are at, and we might we have these cards which are 1, 2, 3, and 4. 4 is strong support of decision. 3 is in support of a decision. 2 is in support with some reservations. 1 is not a willingness to move forward at this time. After we've done that check, then the committee would circle back to any 1s and 2s to talk to them about their concerns, try to address those concerns, work on adjusting the proposal as need be, bring it back for a potential second round. It could be that the proposal is dropped if there's too much opposition, but most likely we would do a lot of the important work of moving people forward, shifting the proposal so that people feel comfortable with it, come back and do another round of either looking to see are there any additional clarifying questions, or first explaining where the proposal is at now, any additional questions, consensus check. If we're still not in agreement, maybe taking some arguments in favor and against, maybe another consensus check. This all really depends because it could be something that we can make a decision very quickly on, or it might take more time. And we've had decisions that span the gamut, and we've had some that have taken several faculty meetings. But we always try to do it as in a way that's as expedient as possible, and does not take too many faculty meetings, because if it's taking too many, it's not probably worth it, and there's other things that we need to attend to. And ultimately we're trying to get to a place where we're all either 2, 3, or 4. We've logged everybody's names and we know who they are. There's also a part where we agree that we're going to come back and review the decision once it's been made, and we set aside time to do that as well. And we have what we call a crew orientation. All the students are invited to go for 4 days into the woods when they first come and do a lot of team building activities, and we do that through Outward Bound. We are an Outward Bound school. But that being said, there's probably a lot more that we could do, but we just never expect that we're going to get people to stay on a Saturday because we've tried and they just rarely will. We'll try to engage them in activities or events. Some might be coming to Night Corps conference and volunteering, but it's just hard. I would say that we adapt a lot, and we're always a little nervous because a lot of what we do is not part of the traditional expectations of schools. Just recently, in the last teacher contract, there was a provision for schools like ours to sort of come out and make ourselves more visible. It's called PROS. It's an acronym. I cannot tell you what it stands for. I forget. But it's a handful of schools in the city that are working actually with the Department of Education and the teacher union to do some things that, in our case, are not the traditional teacher evaluation system. And what that looks like for us is that we are instead doing much more intervisitations, which we think is a much better way to build our teaching practice than just relying on supervisor observations. We're not a Regent school. We only give one exam, the ELA exam. So the teacher test scores that are connected to, many teachers, scores are connected to the test. And, we know this is happening nationally. We're impacted by that on a much smaller scale. We still are. It's just either ELA or the NICESLAT exam, which is very unfair because most of us aren't really teaching that. But that being said, we try to offset it by doing things that we think are much more authentic. So we do our best to adapt, but we do fear the day where some of these adjustments and some of these expectations will be so great that we won't be able to continue. And right now we're experiencing a lot of scrutiny, and a lot of other schools could probably speak to that as well under the current administration. It's challenging. Well, they've revamped so many of these things. There used to be ARIS. There was a lot of talk about how a student that is taught is attached to a teacher, but what if they're being taught by different teachers, and what if something that happened in the prior year, because they're being measured like the previous year compared to this year, and value added. It's all very complicated, and I know that it's greatly highly problematic. That being said, I don't think that we feel it here. It is not something that impacts us. I will say that there is a concern that one of our teachers, our English language learner teacher, is the only one I think that is impacted by the NICESLAT exam, and so there's a great sort of pressure to see some students do well there, and it's very arbitrary that it's just her, because we all teach these students. It's a lot of pressure, so we don't think that is fair. And it feels a little bit like greater pressure on our ELA department, because the ELA exam is disproportionately impacting. Like the phys ed teacher, who's also is a science teacher as well, is graded based on the ELA exam, which is silly. So we talk about it. We don't feel it as much, but we think that it's unfair. The teacher evaluation is all about it's been a while since I've looked at it closely, but it's about state test scores, local assessments, and still it's like, I believe it's about 60% of things that are happening with the school, but none of that can be attributed to like work that's being done on any of these restorative practices, unfortunately.